It's recording.
All right.
So I'm Christy Halley. I'm the director of VPVA on the Rutgers-Newark campus.
And Anwar Najmi, care coordinator for the Rutgers University Newark care team.
I'm Angelica. I manage the social media for the Health Promotion Division, and I am a recovery ally with the alcohol and drug. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking right now. I'm so sorry. The alcohol and other drug assistance program.
Sorry, I had to move rooms. My name is Farah. I am the co-director of Student Health Advocates, a part of Health Promotion Division.
And my name is Kayla, and I'm a programming assistant at VPVA.
So we're just going to allow our three students who also work for some of our offices to talk a little bit about how they've been affected personally during COVID. We also had some feedback from other students, so we can maybe interject with some of those thoughts, but we really want to keep it open to find out how our students have been affected in their personal lives, how COVID has affected their academics, how COVID's affected their mental health, and then kind of leave it open to share any other thoughts or feelings that you think might be relevant, because we really want to get a snapshot of what our campus has experienced and our students in particular, so that we can provide resources that are most applicable to our students and create programming based on that. Would anyone like to share or start?
I call on Farah.
I feel like okay, so like before quarantine or before COVID, it was kind of like we were like pretty much in our prime. I don't know if that like makes sense. Like we were all so excited. We were going on spring break. Summer was coming. It was excitement. And then when quarantine first started, everybody was like, okay, like we'll be back in like 2 weeks. Like it's not nothing. And then we didn't come back in 2 weeks. It took us months before we could even like see anyone. And I think the fact that we didn't have to like move out of our beds, or like we could just roll over and join a Zoom call. And some classes didn't even meet all the time. So people would just be like, okay, well, I'm going to just finish whatever to do. I'm going to do it and then complete it and then go about my business. And so it was kind of like trying to navigate that was hard for me specifically, because it's like, I was so used to like, cause I'm a commuter. So I would get up, get dressed, go to work, and I'd be at school pretty much all day and then go home. And so the fact that I had to go, I went from, at first it was like, oh, it's nice to not have to keep getting up early in the morning to go to work or go to school. But then it kind of was like, there's no point in me, like, I don't want to roll over and join a Zoom. Or even if I do join a Zoom, it's like, I'm not really paying attention because I didn't really get out of bed because I don't have to move, you know? And so it kind of like, it got to a point where I wasn't like leaving my bed for days. And that just made my mental health horrible. Like there were days where I just didn't want to do anything at all. And I feel like I've talked to like several other students and they're like, yeah, it sucks. But now that we're doing a virtual fall, I think people are taking it harder because it's like we were hoping that we would be at least back by fall. And the fact that we're not back by fall is kind of like, okay, how do I now navigate doing school? Like it's all fun and games because majority of quarantine was mostly summer, right? Like the last 3 months have been summer. So most people haven't been doing classes, but like now we're in school. Like now I have to take initiative for my academic achievements. And I think that's so hard for a lot of us because it's like, we don't all have spaces to like sit and do our work. Like I don't have a desk, like a personal space to sit and do my desk work or anything like that. So if I'm doing homework, there's going to be so many things going on around my house. Like we're in a meeting right now, there's so many things going on around the house and I can't like move anywhere I want to, if that makes sense. So it's like a lot of us are like, okay, so then how do we do this? Like, how do I get myself to have enough motivation to be like, all right, it's time to like actually get the work done? Or you want to go to this event? Like there's been events that I've heard about and I'm like, ooh, this seems so interesting to see. And I'm just like, I'm laying in bed already. I don't even want to move.
Mm.
Or I don't even want to go. Like, I hope that they pre-record it and I'll just watch it from there. But yeah, that's what I think.
Anyone else?
I'll go. I feel like if there's like any word to describe like 2020 or like what we're living through, it's just stress. Like Farah said, like in March, I'm a dorming student, so it was just like, you know, we heard it in the news, but it's like it never really, we didn't expect it to hit us. So I feel like a lot of it was just unexpected. And I remember just one day I was at work and like we got an email and said that school was closing. And we were like, what? And we were like, okay, we'll be back in a week or so. Like we'll come back after spring break. It's nothing. And then we got another email that told us to evacuate our dorms. And it was very anxiety provoking. A lot of us didn't know what the rest of the semester would look like. I know like personally for like my academics that semester, when school got canceled, a lot of my professors, they were just done too. Like we probably had like one more assignment after that and we finished in like March. So like transitioning to like fall is like we really didn't know what to expect with a full semester being online. And it's like I feel like a lot of the professors don't either. Like a lot of people don't really know how to navigate this technological space. So we have technology issues, they're having technology issues. It's all merging. There's a lot more work. Yeah. I feel like professors just have like this kind of notion that like everyone's home, everyone's free, we can just give them busy work. But like when they're all doing this, we have a lot of work and it's like assignments are constantly due. And especially with the by arrangement courses, like we're constantly having to check Blackboard to see when things are due. And it's just overwhelming a bit. Yeah.
Thank you. Angelica?
So I think in terms of mental health too, I think it's really important to just kind of think also, because although the students, of course, we are dealing with so much, but professors too, and I think when you have both professors and students kind of dealing with, it's like a mental health crisis. This is so hard. It kind of puts things into perspective. And I totally agree in terms of classwork, we have the same expectations, but so much more anxiety and just kind of like feelings of isolation and depression, which I feel like haven't really been taken into account. But then I guess it's like, how do you deal with this? There's not exactly a handbook. There's no way for us to prepare. And also when this first started and we had to evacuate from our dorms, like in my room, I had a little like table in my dining room chair as a desk, and because I didn't prepare for this, and that really makes it difficult to have a spot, like a space, just like Farah said. And then also just everything shifted. It's crazy. I was supposed to study abroad. I was supposed to go to Italy. And so everything was kind of just completely kind of like just washed away. And so having to make plans and prepare for fall has definitely been interesting. It's been like difficult. And then also in terms of the hours by arrangement, yeah, I had classes mainly on Mondays and Wednesdays. And now I have class like every single day at the weirdest times. So for my job, it was so hard for me to make a schedule. It still kind of is. And everything is weird. And I think it's good to acknowledge that. Like everything is so just weird and we're all struggling. But we're doing it, you know? I think we're all doing a pretty good job. So
And that's really all we can do is just one day to the next. But you know, I'm grateful for you all to at least acknowledging how hard this is. This is not supposed to be easy. This is not normal. So it sounds like a lot of the same concerns about having the space and the mental energy to do your academics. And then along with academics come a whole lot more work than there was when it was in-person instruction. And then there's tech issues. And then there's the compounded mental health issues and the depression. Does anybody feel comfortable speaking a little bit to how like your socialization has been affected by all this?
I
Or your
feel like
relationships with people?
I have lost all social skills I had. I feel like that has completely gone out the window. Just because we haven't been communicating with like anyone in person, and kind of having to transition to this virtual world, I think kind of also has like a leeway in a way too. So those like communication skills, just like you don't really need them as much. And then in terms of like, you know, with friends, I definitely have felt like super isolated. It's been hard to keep in contact with friends that you had in class, or you would see every day in your dorm. And so I've definitely have not been, I guess, communicating with like, or I guess like speaking with friends as much as I would. And I haven't been doing anything either. I've been pretty much at home this whole time. So that's for me.
On the flip end, I'd say that I feel as though my socialization has improved throughout quarantine. If any of you like know me personally, you know, like I'm a terrible texter. It still takes me weeks to respond to emails. But I feel like quarantine has just forced me to like improve my communication, because like I realized that like now it's like through text, through email, that's the only way you can communicate with people. And I have to like hold myself responsible and be accountable, because I can't just like pop up and have an in-person conversation with someone when they send me an email. So like I feel like it's kind of like forced me in a way to be more personable through my text and be more accountable and respond to emails on time. Yeah.
Farah?
Good.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know if you wanted me to answer or not.
If you want to.
I agree with Kayla. I feel like, honestly, I I agree with both of you, on both of you, depending on the day. Some days I socialize, like I'm really good with socializing. I'll respond back to texts. I'll respond back to DMs, etc. And then other days I just don't talk back at all. Like I don't communicate. And those are usually like the hardest days, because I just don't feel like really socializing, or I just feel like today I just need a break from like everything, not necessarily like the people around me, but like everything that's going on in the world, and just like, you know, just taking some time for myself. So I'm both of them in one. So yeah.
I definitely hear but all of what you guys have said. Even just, you know, we're staff, but that doesn't mean that this doesn't play onto our lives as well. I always like, I'm very polite, obviously, as much as I can be, but when people ask me like, what's new? I'm like, what do you mean what's new? Every day is Groundhog Day. That expression just means like every day kind of feels the same. I have totally misrepresented what day it was on multiple occasions. I'm like, yeah, like it's such a Wednesday. And they'll be like, it's Sunday. And I'm like, what? And then I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. Or, you know, in general, just time feels like stagnant, but it also feels like it's going very fast. It doesn't help that we're like right on the brink of a weather change. And also like even this morning, I wasn't really feeling my best. So we're on the brink of a weather change. The days are going to start to get shorter. Like we're kind of going back to where we started. And, you know, I'm going to pull up a quote really quick just because I feel like it relates to this question. I have a friend I follow that she's a psychologist, and she, you know, posts some inspiring tidbits every now and then. And this is in relation to like recovery. But I think it also kind of applies to like not the socialization aspect, but more so like the mundane aspect. So it was the question, she's like, all right, what if it happens again? And she gave some examples. If a person starts drinking again, if a person gets depressed again, if a person cheats again, if a person has another episode, if a person has another rough patch. And she said, relapse prevention is like preventing a car accident. We can't ever guarantee it won't happen again, but we can wear a seatbelt, choose a safe car, and drive carefully. Therefore, control what you can and accept what you can't. So I feel like these little like messages have very big importance. I would before I would have read that and been like, oh, cute, good job. But I think at the same time, it's just like, wow, like sometimes you feel like you really needed that. Like I really needed to hear that. So yeah, I hope to kind of just synthesize everything that we were saying, but I know we want to keep moving forward. So do you want to, Christy, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, you mentioned that term, and I feel like I've been using that a lot too since March, that every day feels like Groundhog Day. And I know some of you touched on, like Angelica, you said you were supposed to go to Italy. And, Farah and Kayla, you both said, this happened right around spring break time and everybody had plans. I know one of the things for me that I've struggled with is there's nothing to look forward to. There's no vacation. There's no party. There's we're not even sure if we're having Halloween. It's holidays have been cut short. That anxiety around, are we going to stay in the same place that we're at? Is it going to get worse? Is it going to get better? Is it going to get better tomorrow? Are we going to open schools? Are schools going to close again? Are we going to be, we have, to your point, Anwar, about control, we have very little control. So I think it's really important to find the things we can control and really hold on to those, because everything is so very uncertain. And as people, we hate uncertainty. We love to control our own being and our own space because it makes us feel validated, and it's frightening to not have control over anything. And I think the one thing we can take, or at least I can say I can take out of this, is to recognize how little control we have over our environment as a whole. And so to some extent that's kind of it's kind of refreshing. I know, like, my personality trait is I want to control everything, and this has really forced me to take a step back and say, I control so little about the world I live in. And I know a lot of other people thrive in that same environment where everything is so particular and everything has to be so organized and what's coming next. And this whole year has thrown us for a loop because every single thing that we had planned, whether it was this weekend or next year, is up in the air. And so that's something real to acknowledge to yourselves, and it's okay to be upset about. I feel like we all have really good days and we all have really bad days. And on the bad days we have, sometimes a literal tantrum, and it's like everything is horrible and everything sucks. But I think it's important to remind ourselves that, we've come so far since March, and we've all grown as people. Some have had it much more difficult than others, but we've all had struggles. And so I feel like it's really important to take a personal inventory of what you've had to encounter since March and really, really validate yourselves, which I know people have trouble doing. And just, acknowledge that this has been one of the worst years in so many different facets, and that you are doing a fantastic job just being present, just showing up. You're still enrolled in school. You're still being a part of groups, you're still being a part of friends, relationships, and families, and you have to make a conscious choice now more than ever to do that. So I think it's really important to give yourself credit every day.
I think absolutely. And I'm gonna segue that because you kind of ended with, you're still here, you're still our students, you're still doing it, you're still making the dream happen. But with that, there's some questions that are raised. So since being home, since COVID really unfolded, what barriers have you guys as students, or just people that other students that what barriers have students faced trying to access campus resources? And that's not just VPVA, CARE team, or student life, anything like that. Like I want you to even think, like, if you're enrolled in a special interest program like Cooperman Scholars, EOF, HLLC, if you're a part of like the business school programs or just clubs or whatever, but actually not clubs, but more so like resources on campus that are typically staffed by faculty members, administrators. You know, how do you feel about it? Please be honest. And gentle at the same time.
I feel like it's
Go ahead.
to access a lot of these resources. Like personally, like I know like financial aid and the office of registrar, like they're very hard people to get in touch with, especially now versus before the pandemic. You can just pop in their office every day and eventually they'll have to speak to you. But now you can't do that. So it's like sending constant emails and like waiting on a response. And like when you know, like you and probably 3,000 other students have questions. So you know that the wait is going to be long. And it's just like, whatever like your question is, it can like determine whether or not you can go to school or not. It's so that can cause a lot of anxiety. And it's just overall, a lot of the resources on campus is just like the response time is a lot.
Also, the social media presence of some like of the resources on campus, it kind of makes it more difficult to be able to like reach out. And also the fact that you have to be on camera or like have your audio on. A lot of people aren't comfortable with that. And like the situation that they can be going through could be really private, and it could be really hard to find like a space where you could freely talk about that. So yeah. And also technology, I think, is a barrier for a lot of people in terms of Wi-Fi. And just, yeah, just even having a laptop to be able to access these services on, I think definitely become barriers for resources on campus. So.
Farah?
I agree. I feel like just the whole communicating with a lot of the departments is hard. Trying to get in touch and get like an efficient answer. Because sometimes like even when you're asking those questions, like those questions are like based on like timelines. Like, okay, if it's gonna take 24 hours for you to respond, it may even take longer than that. That means I have to, and something is due in like the next 48 hours, then I'm hoping that the answer that you're giving me is efficient enough for me to answer whatever I need to get done. I also feel like, I mean, the student affairs website was redone and fixed so that it's the most up to date, but like financial aid's website isn't the most up to date that it could be, because there's still like 2019, 2020. And then when you go into the 2020, 21 portion of it, it's not much information on there. So even when you're just looking for like simple answers, you can't get them because it's not up there. And then like I had emailed financial aid the other day and they sent me to go drop off something for them, but you're not allowed to go into Blumenthal Hall without an appointment for them. And so that kind of irritated me because it was like, I drove all the way over here, even though your website said that I could drop it off, but I can't drop it off because I need an appointment to drop it off. And so that was a whole situation. And that's what it is for me, is like, even if it was hard to just communicate with you in general, it's harder when you're like not able to get like the correct answers or get the correct information that you should be getting.
And back to the website being remade, I feel like in terms of accessibility, that wasn't really taken into account. I feel like even for me, it's very difficult to kind of scroll through the website to find health services, to find, HPV, to find these like the certain websites for student affairs. And so I think in terms of it being accessible, I think it is a pretty difficult format that they have now, which can make it even more difficult to find the resources that you need. So.
That's really great feedback for us as staff, because we're always in meetings and we're constantly, here's one thing that I wish that COVID has taught me that I need to really get better at, is coming to meetings with tons of questions because now, especially, you know, you're not running into people in the hallway and being like, oh my God, I had to ask you this question. You know, there's none of that. Everything you need to have your P's and Q's accounted for. That means you need to, you know, have everything ready. If you come to meetings, you have to ask questions, and then you also have to be prepared to offer solutions. Sometimes it's just like, hey, listen, like, this is what I heard from a student, this is what I heard from a staff member. I don't really have a solution yet. Let's use this time to brainstorm something. But I think all your feedback is extremely helpful and critical, because, you know, our offices and our departments are always changing and responding and adapting. But with this, as the news and everywhere in the world are saying, these unprecedented times truly just means that we were all like, what the heck is happening? And that's the political way of saying it. What the heck is happening, and how are we going to respond to this in a logical, but also like emotionally sensitive manner that, you know, we're trying to respond to people here, right? This is one of the only businesses in the world that is solely dependent on our customers' experiences. And it's like, if you guys as students aren't happy, we're truly not doing our jobs. We're not like other organizations where it's like, oh, if we put out a product like a Johnson & Johnson or a Unilever where they do consumer goods. If I sell you a bar of soap that you don't like, it's okay. You'll find another one that you like. Versus what we do, we're highly specialized, but it also means that all of your feedback is the bread and butter to what we do here. And if we're not servicing you in a way that is helpful, productive, or efficient, your academic success will then in turn be hindered, or it's not going to be, or not success, but also just experience is going to be like, well, blah, blah, blah. Like, I just feel like if I would have got my answer sooner, I would have been less anxious. And if I was less anxious, I would have been able to study. And if I was able to study, I probably would have done better. It's a domino effect. And really, y'all are in charge. Like, that's, and it's an expression that gets thrown around a lot. And Christy, please tell me if you've heard it, where they always say that you guys are in the driver's seat. I truly believe in that. You guys are in the driver's seat. We're all your resources. We're all your passengers. We provide insight, we provide advisement, we provide guidance, but at the end of the day, this is your show. And you just tell us how you want things to go. So that's my 2 cents on it. Christy, I would really love to hear your side, because you also, you know, had changes during COVID, and like you said, like it's been interesting trying to make an online environment still feel like that cozy, happy place that we used to be. I don't know, some of you have been in my office, some of you haven't. I don't think everyone has, but like, I try to make it like a happy place, and like, come sit, like, let's talk, let's chat, let's, you know, shoot the breeze, whatever. But it's hard to do that with WebEx and Zoom. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously I echo everything that you've said. It's very hard to keep students engaged. It's hard to keep faculty and staff engaged. It's hard to keep anybody engaged, you know, and that's the truth. When you're in your home environment, and all of us have very different lives, but at the crux of it, we all have lives other than Rutgers. And Rutgers and our home life have now collided. And so it looks different for everybody, but at the end of the day, you know, your home life and your work life, or your school life and your home life and your work, your home, you know, homeschool and work should be separate as much as possible. And when, you know, we have family members that are all living in the house all at the same time with their respective jobs, and they're all working out of one house and different schedules, and kids or siblings or cousins or parents or grandparents that we live with, you know, it is not easy. And on top of that, we're asking students, show up every day, put yourself together, get on a webcam, be present in your classes. We still want you to, participate in, quote unquote extracurriculars. We want you to get involved on campus. We want you to attend these programs, and we're tired. So it's our job as staff to find the best way to support students. And that's really what we wanted to get out of today is we know you're tired. And yet we're still committed to showing up for all of you. And so, how can we learn from you? Because like Anwar said, you're in the driver's seat. So what can we learn from you? And one thing I can say from a programmatic standpoint is our program, VPVA, in terms of students coming for clinical services and reaching out for support has never been busier since we've been open. And I think that speaks a lot to the traumas that people are experiencing in their own lives, in their own homes, that they may not have a space to share with others. And so I'm wondering if, before we have a couple more questions, but I'm wondering if anybody feels comfortable speaking, not necessarily from a personal perspective, but maybe just from, how has COVID affected students that are living in unsafe situations at home? What does that look like for them? What challenges are they facing on top of everything that we've already talked about? What does that look like for them? And at the end, I'd really like to be able to talk about a couple of resources for all the students that we're talking about. Would anybody like to share?
I can go. I mean, for some students specifically, like in unsafe home situations, like the outside world was their safe place. Like people will do anything to avoid being home because they just don't want to go. And when quarantine hit, it was like you can't go outside. So like there was no place to be safe. It's not like you can get on the phone or talk to someone because you may have a partner that checks your phone. You may have someone who's listening to you at home. So it's like, where can I really go? I'm stuck here. I can't talk to anyone and I can't go anywhere. And at that point, like you're just essentially being isolated. And like we know that that's a form of abuse. Like you isolate someone from the outside world, but instead this time, not only is it the person isolating you, but it's the circumstance. Mm-hmm. So I feel like that together is just a really difficult situation to be in, and it can definitely escalate at home situations.
Absolutely. Anyone else?
I think it even like some people were so avoidant of being home, of what they would consider home, that like they would even put their health at risk. Like they would very much rather like not like be in a hospital bed with COVID as opposed to being home. And I think that's really scary because it's like they had this space and it's kind of like the space was kind of just like ripped from them with no like other option to go.
Yeah. Absolutely. When you're in that situation, home is the enemy and COVID might not seem so scary.
I feel like there's so many factors that are involved that make things just so much more difficult. And it can be, talking to your therapist on Zoom, being unable to do that. It could even be text lines and safety lines being just so overly crowded. Like you said, they're so busy right now. And that definitely speaks on just how like necessary these resources are, but also how like big of an issue it is right now. And the fact that I feel like there's just so many things that go into it, whether the abuser or whoever maybe their phone is being checked, just kind of like their freedom. It really depends, and it just makes it so much more difficult to like cope and seek services. So, yeah.
And I feel like a common response.
Yeah, and I think that's, from a programmatic standpoint, like I said, that's really what we're seeing is, obviously our program focuses on prevention of violence, but we see students that have unfortunately been affected, and so many students have come forward saying, I'm not safe at home. I don't feel comfortable at home. I don't feel safe at home. It may or may not have been unsafe before, but after living in an environment with so many other people in a household for months where tensions are high and we can't leave our house and people lost their jobs and financial statuses have changed, and it's, you know, mental health is seriously declining. People that had psychiatrists that relied on psychiatrists for medication, pediatric medication that they couldn't receive, you know, things like that, where people are not getting help that they need, and now you're in an environment at home that's toxic, and it's very scary for a lot of people. So unfortunately, that is something a lot of our students are dealing with. And, you know, school doesn't look the same as it did before to come to as a safe haven. So, you know, I can definitely attest from what I'm hearing from students that it's of a serious concern for them. I need to get out of my home environment, but how much can I come to school? And what does that look like for me? Kind of piggybacking off of that, I would love to hear from y'all about what you would like to see as the university's response to COVID, and whether that looks like something to you personally, whether there's something that you want to see that hasn't been happening, or something you feel like we or the university have been doing incorrectly. What have you been experiencing? You know, we've shared a lot about the things that have been you've been struggling with, but I'd love to know how we can make it better. So if any of you feel comfortable sharing, what can Rutgers-Newark do, or Rutgers University as a whole do in response to this all for our students?
And Christy, and just so I want to include before you guys answer, once you guys answer that, I want to just take a minute, just, or like whatever you say, just provide what some assistance has been provided. But again, all feedback is extremely helpful and very critical.
I feel like there should be, just right now, there's a greater understanding. I think for everyone, we should just show a little more, just like, I guess, care towards one another. And if that means just allowing a student to keep their camera off or their microphone off, or reply to a discussion over email rather than to like an open space, things like that, I feel would be helpful to many students. Because again, there are just so many factors like win, and none of us chose this. None of us decided like, oh, I want to take an online class. I want to make a Flipgrid video like 3 times a week, you know? It's like, we're just kind of like, we have to do this in order to get our education, to complete our education. So I feel that just having just like a nicer, just being kind and just, yeah, working to understand the student and their needs, I think is helpful.
Thank you.
I completely like second everything that Angelica just said, just with like being understanding that like you said, Christy, students are balancing a school life and a home life. Like personally, like I have a 6-month nephew at home, and like I'm taking care of him, and like he's crying, but like I'm in class and my professor's like, oh, can you like unmute your mic and like give your participation through like group discussion? I'm like, can I put it in the chat? Because like you're not gonna hear me if I'm speaking. And then they're like, oh, like you may lose participation points. So I just feel like, in a way, I feel like they can be more understanding in a sense.
Yeah.
I agree. I don't want to add anything else because I just agree with everything they said.
Just I guess a second question addition. So, you know, a lot of what I do, for those of you who don't know, I'm basically expected to be very resource savvy in terms of what's going on in the university, what's being afforded to students, all these resources, mainly on campus and also off campus, that will, I always say like that will improve your academic success. But when I say improving your academic success, I'm not saying like going to a learning center. Well, I mean, learning center is one of them, but all of these things that holistically impact your experience. So some things that the university has provided students with technology issues, there has been an effort to provide students like a borrowed laptop. There's been just additional software, just things of that nature for students that need certain compatibilities on their laptops to be able to complete assignments. Angelica, like you said, if you're like a graphic design or an art student, you know, you may need certain programs. There has been an effort to provide emergency fund assistance. You know, but the thing that with that, was from the federal government, and actually a lot of people confuse CARE, like the CARE team, with CARES Act. It's unfortunate that they're the same name, but CARES is the Coronavirus Relief Assistance Act that the federal government has provided to students, kind of like you saw, if you saw like in the news, you know, the $600 additional money being provided to those who are getting unemployment or stimulus checks. You know, this is just another financial effort to provide assistance to students. And the problem is we have X amount of dollars for Y amount of students. So the funding was limited and it came and went very quickly. And then you also have to think about the limitations in accessing resources that some students have. Not all students qualify for the same things. So, you know, depending on what the situation is, what Angelica may have access to, Kayla may not, and the other way around. And then also just in general, like you said, this notion of just greater understanding and kindness. I mean, there has been some efforts in certain spaces, like for example, the Office of Financial Aid and Student Accounting, like that whole wheelhouse, they're not assessing late fees this semester, which was a big thing of like a big issue before people, because like Farah, your point earlier, like if I need to hand this in within 2 days, like am I going to get penalized? You know, they have made those efforts to determine social work is to meet people where they are, and it's to, okay, like everybody's struggling, like not everybody has a scanner or a printer, so they have to go to a scanner or printer. And it's like, if I'm thinking about this at 10 o'clock at night, okay, I have to wait till the next morning to go to Staples and, you know, do what I have to do. And just in general, that's the grace that we've been able to provide at an institutional level. But you know, the micro level is where it really makes a difference and where it counts. And when I think of micro interactions, I think of you guys in your classes, you guys in your programs that you participate in. If someone doesn't want to have their mic and camera on, you know, maybe rather than having a knee-jerk reaction of being like frustrated, maybe emailing that person on the side, or, you know, whatever, or even you guys as students getting in front of it, like, hey, professor, like prior to the class, hey, professor, I'm in class today. I'm here and I'm gonna participate in the group chat because I'm watching my 6-month nephew who may wake up for nap time and I may have to step out, the same way that you would step out to take a phone call. You know, we can do as much preventative work as possible, but like you said, that common undertone of just being patient and being graceful and being nice. People need compassion. People need compassion these days more than ever. So that's just some things that I can think of, but I don't want that to be that's not the official response. That's just my response. Much, Christy. Sorry.
Oh.
No, go ahead.
Emphasizing that you only know such a small piece of like someone's story of what someone's going through. And to just like to all professors, all faculty, all students too, just with one another, to just remember that you really have no idea. And so if a student asks to have their camera off or any kind of accommodation, I really think that it's like, why not? We are literally in the middle of a pandemic and it is hard, so.
I also want to put a couple of numbers out there. So I know that this is recorded, so screen sharing won't necessarily help if people are listening to it, but I do want to give a couple of phone numbers for students. And the first one I want to give is the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, because I know that it's always a scary thing to breach the topic of with people, but I know from my work in social work, in mental health, that when people are experiencing what we're experiencing now, which is uncertainty, fear, and isolation, it's something that might cross people's mind more than they care to admit. And so I think to have some place where people can talk and, you know, maybe not necessarily tell a family or friend what they're feeling. And so I want to just share the number. And the number is 1-800-273-8255. And that's the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. And I think it's especially important to, you know, I think one of the things right now is that because we're so, I hate to continue to use the term isolated, but we're not in person. We can't check on people the same way that we used to be able to check on them. We can't see their tells if something is wrong. People can hide things that are wrong a lot more than they could before. You know what your friends, you know what your friends sound like when they're happy, and you know what they sound like or look like when they're upset about something. And if we're just texting them, it's a lot easier to hide it. So, you know, I think, you know, Anwar just spoke about prevention. I think one of the best ways that we can do our part is to check in on people. You know, and if we notice that they're not responding, follow up with them. We don't have to bombard them, but just let them know, hey, listen, if you need to talk about anything, I'm here. Or if you feel like you can't be that person and you know they're struggling, give them a resource. Because it's also really important to make sure that your own self-care and your own mental health is being taken into account, because we're taking on more roles now than we ever have before. And so, you know, as much as I would love to say, hey, listen, you have to be there for someone all the time, you need to check in on yourself and know where you're at too. And so I'm also going to put in the number for VPVA's text-based helpline. And so one of the topics that we all shared today is the fact that there's not a space that every student has that's a safe space for them to talk to a professor or to talk to a friend. A lot of students that are coming forward for therapy are asking if they can email sessions because there's no safe space in their house to call. And whoever they live with is questioning, why would you go sit in your car for an hour for 45 minutes? So I'm going to give the number, and the number is 973-339-0734. And it's confidential and it's text-based. So nobody has to hear if you're in a res hall, if you're at home, if you share a bedroom, if you share a space with someone who's, you know, checking your messages. That's a number. No one will ask your RUID. No one will ask your name. And it's a safe space to get some additional resources and to get some help and just support from students on campus. Or is there anything you'd like to share, resource-based or?
Well, resources, I just put some flyers in the chat for you guys who are here to take away. Please feel free to share them, screenshot, whatever the case may be. I also put the contact information for the care team, because if you're kind of in like a, I don't know where to start phase, I'm happy to work with you. Any member of the care team is happy to work with you to kind of help truly navigate. I know that word gets thrown around, but like, let's figure out how to fix this. Let's get some arms around this. Let's take some actionable steps. You know, I'm all about like devising a plan and thinking about being solution oriented within, you know, parameters, right? And I everything Christy said, just don't let too much time pass before, you know, you don't want to wish, oh, I should have just texted them, or, you know, even if it's just like a real quick, like they have so many memes, there's so many things out there to get people's attention. And even if you just want to like send someone like I'm thinking about you, or, you know, I hope your day is going well, miss you, whatever the case may be, just those little things make such a big difference. Or, you know, whatever your approach is. Some people, everyone does things differently. You know, I'm definitely a caller type. So if you guys ever need to speak, or anybody you know who's just like, you know, I just need to talk to someone. I just need to just kind of blow some steam off, because you don't want it to boil up and then it's like a kettle. It's just whistling and screaming for help. But that's all I have to share. And, you know, I really do appreciate all of you guys for being here today and being very honest and being very brave and being very just warm and welcoming to our questions, and being a voice for a lot of people, because you guys may have said something that someone was just thinking, yes, like that's how I've been feeling, like please answer my email. Like you don't know who you're speaking for, really. And again, just thanks for spending a part of your Monday with us. I know it's kind of a heavyish start to the week, but don't let it impact everything. If anything, we're all here together, and we truly are all in this together.
I think a lot of us are problem solvers by nature. And so when someone comes to us with an issue, our automatic response is, let me see how I can fix it. And this is, when people hear this, I hope, or when people share their feelings about COVID or about their quarantine or about the experience of 2020 in general, I hope that what we can take from that is, rather than jump to our knee-jerk reaction of like, oh, it's not that bad, or maybe it'll get better, or I think we can try to just sit with them and just say, you're right. Yeah, it kind of sucks. Because sometimes that's what people need, just to feel validated, And so, I hope that you were able to get something out of this. I know I did. And I know that I'm not a student, but, just hearing the collective experiences from everybody, even I felt like, okay, so I'm not alone. Everybody is feeling the same way. And while I don't wish that on anybody, I think it is something that unifies everybody to just say, hey, listen, I'm not suffering in this alone. And my life might not look exactly like yours, but I'm not by myself. I'm not alone. And so I hope that everybody can kind of take that away from this, is that your experience is valid. And we're obviously always here if anybody needs to share or to talk. And thank you very much for being open and for being willing to be really raw and honest about something that's really difficult to talk about.
Well, it seems like we're about time. So, with that, I wish you guys the best. I hope you have a great week. I hope you have a solid fall semester despite the circumstances. And just keep hope alive, really. Focus on the light and where you can. And this whole notion of self-care, whatever it is, whether it's your art, whether it's poetry, whether it's calling a friend, baking a dish, making a TikTok dance, or just taking naps. Do what you got to do. Petting your dog, walking your dog, whatever it is, just do that thing. And I hope to see you guys all soon in person, in a socially distanced, safe way, obviously. But that's all I got.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Have a good week.
Bye.
Bye. Stop recording.
Oh, okay.